Imagine living next to someone who seems perfectly normal, only to discover a dark and disturbing secret. Today, we're uncovering 3 terrifying tales of neighbors who turned out to be anything but ordinary. Story 1. The Friendly Neighbor. John List appeared to be the epitome of the American dream in 1970s. Living in Westfield, New Jersey, a respected accountant, he lived in a grand mansion with his wife Helen and their 3 children: Patricia, John Jr., Frederick, and his elderly mother, Alma. They attended church every Sunday, participated in community events, and were regarded by neighbors as a model family. Beneath this facade of success, however, lay a darker truth. In 1971, List lost his job at a local bank, a devastating blow to his pride and financial stability. Unable to face his family with the truth, List continued to dress in a suit every morning and leave for work, spending his days at the train station instead, secretly withdrawing funds from his mother's bank accounts to maintain the illusion of affluence. As the financial pressure mounted, List became increasingly desperate. On the morning of November 9th, 1971, List executed a plan that would shock the nation. As dawn broke over the quaint neighborhood, John List made his move with the cold precision of a seasoned tactician. Helen List, his devoted wife, unsuspectingly went about her morning routine in the kitchen. John approached her silently, the weight of his decision hanging heavy in the air. Without a word, he raised the pistol and fired, the sharp cracks of gunfire shattering the morning stillness. The scene unfolded with chilling clarity. Helen, caught off guard, fell to the ground as blood stained the pristine kitchen tiles. But John's mission was far from over. With a calculated calmness, he ascended the stairs to the bedrooms. List then proceeded methodically through the house, gunning down his mother Alma as she lay sleeping in her bed on the 3rd floor. The horror continued as List awaited the return of his children from school. Each child, unaware of the impending tragedy, met their fate at the hands of their father. Patricia and Frederick were shot upon arriving home, their young lives cut short in an act of unfathomable brutality. List's son, John Jr., returned from a high school soccer game later that day, where he received praise from his father before being fatally shot in the chest. One by one, he extinguished their lives, extinguishing their futures with each pull of the trigger. The silence of the suburban home was punctuated by the muffled sounds of gunshots and the anguished cries that went unheard. After the final shots rang out, John List's home, once a sanctuary of family warmth, became a chilling place of death. He methodically arranged the bodies of his loved ones in the ballroom, where they lay. He then covered them gently as if he was protecting them and as a sign of his love. After carrying out the murders, List then maintained a facade of normalcy. He left behind a 5-page letter to his pastor, explaining his actions as an attempt to save his family from a world he perceived as increasingly corrupt and immoral. Then he went to great lengths to cover his tracks. He canceled deliveries, informed the schools of his children's extended absence as a family holiday, and kept the mansion eerily alive with religious hymns playing from radios in all the empty rooms. Weeks passed before their neighbors noticed that the lights were left on all the time and the hymns playing all throughout the day. Concerned by the absence, the neighbors decided to alert the authorities. On December 7th, 1971, police entered the List mansion to discover a scene of unimaginable tragedy: the lifeless bodies of Helen, Alma, Patricia, John Jr., and Frederick lying in the ballroom. To make this creepier, the bodies were accompanied by the haunting hymns, echoing through the house. Despite an extensive search and national media attention, John List managed to evade capture for 18 years. He had assumed a new identity as Robert Clark and relocated to Richmond, Virginia, where he remarried and lived a quiet life, until a viewer's tip from America's Most Wanted led to his arrest in 1989. List's trial in 1990 revealed the harrowing details of his crimes and the psychological motivations behind them. Despite attempts to mitigate his actions with claims of PTSD from his military service, Pettis was convicted and sentenced to 5 life terms in prison, where he died in 2008. Story 2. The Toy Box Killer. In the quaint town of Truth or Consequences, New Mexico, everyone knew David Parker Ray. He was the friendly neighborhood mechanic, always ready with a smile and a helping hand. If you needed your car fixed, Ray was the guy to call. He seemed like the perfect neighbor, reliable, friendly, and utterly unremarkable. His trailer, located near Elephant Bee Lake, was just another part of the landscape, but behind his friendly exterior lurked a darkness that no one could have imagined. This is the story of the Toy Box Killer. On the surface, David Parker Ray was the picture of normalcy. He lived in a modest home with a workshop out back and spent his days tinkering with cars. He'd chat with the neighbors, share a beer, and seemed like the kind of guy you'd trust to watch your dog while you were on vacation. But there was one part of his property that no one ever saw. The trailer he called his toy box. Now, this wasn't your average trailer. Inside, Ray had created a soundproof chamber of horrors. The walls were lined with whips, chains, and surgical instruments. Detailed diagrams and notes covered the surfaces, outlining methods of torture in chilling detail. To the outside world, it was just a trailer, but to those unfortunate enough to see the inside, it was a place of unimaginable terror. And the most chilling part, the recordings. Ray had pre-recorded tapes that he would play for his victims, describing in a calm, matter-of-fact voice the unspeakable things he planned to do to them. Ray worked on his projects in secrecy, ensuring that no sound could escape the trailer's walls. He had a chilling routine, abducting women, often drugging them to render them unconscious. When they woke up, they were strapped to a homemade gynecological table, surrounded by instruments of torture. One of Ray's victims was Cynthia Vigil, a woman who would ultimately play a crucial role in bringing his reign of terror to an end. In March 1999, Cynthia was lured by Ray and his accomplice, Cindy Hendy, under the pretense of a job offer. She was working as a sex worker in Albuquerque when they approached her. Ray then posed as an undercover cop, handcuffing her and claiming she was under arrest for solicitation. Trusting the badge, she didn't resist. Little did she know, she was about to be thrust into a world of unimaginable horror. Once inside the toy box, Cynthia was subjected to unspeakable torment. The walls were lined with grotesque instruments, each designed for maximum pain and suffering. Recordings played on a loop, detailing the horrific ordeals that awaited her. Ray's voice, cold and methodical, described in chilling detail what he planned to do to her. For 3 days, Cynthia endured this hellish existence, her spirit tested to its limits, but amid the darkness she found a flicker of hope. On the 3rd day, while Ray was at work, Cindy Hendy accidentally left the keys to Cynthia's restraints within reach. Seizing the opportunity, Cynthia managed to free herself. She then grabbed an ice pick and attacked Hendy, who was left to watch her. Injured but determined, Cynthia ran out of the trailer barely clothed and sprinted toward freedom. Imagine the terror she felt, running down the dirt road, bloodied, bruised, and desperate for help. She banged on the doors of nearby homes, her screams echoing through the quiet morning. Finally, a neighbor opened the door and, seeing Cynthia's condition, immediately called the authorities. The videotapes were perhaps the most chilling evidence. Each tape contained footage of Ray's victims, documenting their torture in harrowing detail. Seasoned investigators struggled to watch them, sickened by the depths of Ray's depravity. Ray's arrest sent shockwaves through the community. The friendly neighbor everyone thought they knew was actually a sadistic monster. David Parker Ray was arrested and sentenced to 224 years in prison. Despite the overwhelming evidence, he never expressed any remorse. He hinted that the number of his victims was much higher than what the authorities had confirmed. He died behind bars in 2002, taking many of his secrets to the grave, leaving many to believe that the true scale of his crimes may never be fully known. Story 3. Neighbor who knew too much. The Pettis family thought they had found their perfect home in a quiet suburb of Illinois. It was the late 1990s, and they had just moved into a charming 2-story house. The neighborhood was picturesque, the kind of place where everyone knew each other. Kids played in the streets, and there was a sense of community. But soon, they would discover that their new beginning was about to turn into a nightmare. On the surface, everything seemed ideal. The Pettis family, composed of Robert and Susan and their 2 children, Emily and Jake, settled into their new life quickly. They made friends with neighbors, attended local events, and felt like they had finally found a place to call home. However, one neighbor stood out: Mr. Harold Turner. Harold Turner was a reclusive man in his late 50s, living alone in a house that was in stark contrast to the well-kept homes around it. His yard was overgrown, the paint on his house was peeling, and he rarely spoke to anyone. Despite his odd demeanor, the Pettis family didn't think much of it until the strange incidents began. It all started with notes. One crisp fall morning, Susan found a note slipped under their front door. It was written in neat, cursive handwriting and contained details about their family that only someone watching them closely would know. The note read, "Emily really has a beautiful laugh. She loves to play in the backyard at 3 p.m. Susan was unnerved but thought it might be just a harmless prank. However, the notes kept coming. They detailed the family's daily routines, personal conversations, and even mentioned things that happened inside their home. The realization that someone was watching them from close by began to creep into their minds. Robert installed new locks and security cameras, but the notes continued to appear, as if mocking their efforts. Then the late-night visits began. Emily, who was around 10 at the time, started complaining about strange noises outside her window at night. She described hearing footsteps, whispers, and even someone calling her name. One night, Robert decided to stay up and keep watch. Around midnight, he heard the unmistakable sound of someone walking on the gravel path outside their home. He rushed outside only to find no one there. But in the morning, another note awaited them. "Nice try, Robert." The situation escalated when Jake, the youngest child, went missing for several hours. He had been playing in the yard when Susan turned her back for a moment. When she looked again, he was gone, panic-stricken. The family searched frantically, calling the police and their neighbors. Jake was found hours later, sitting in the backyard of Harold Turner's house, looking dazed but unharmed. Turner claimed he had found the boy wandering and brought him home for safety, but his explanation did little to ease the family's growing fear. The final straw came one night when Robert and Susan awoke to find their bedroom door slightly ajar. A note pinned to it that read, "I was here, watching you sleep." That was the last note the Pettis family could tolerate. They packed up and moved out within days, leaving behind the house that had turned their dream into a nightmare. The story didn't end there. After the Pettis family moved out, the new owners of the house reported similar incidents. The police finally conducted a thorough investigation into Harold Turner. What they found was chilling. A room in Turner's house filled with photographs of the Pettis family, journals documenting their every move, and even recordings of their conversations. Turner had been watching them through hidden cameras he had somehow installed in their home. Turner was arrested and charged with multiple counts of stalking, invasion of privacy, and child endangerment. The Pettis family, though traumatized, found some solace in knowing Turner was behind bars. They never returned to the neighborhood, choosing instead to start anew in a place where their safety and privacy were assured. Today's journey through these chilling tales has pulled back the curtain on the darkest aspects of our neighborhoods. From the horrifying atrocities of the toy box killer to the tragic saga of John List. These stories remind us that true horror can lurk just next door. So trust your gut instincts and keep your eyes open. If you've enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe, smash that like button, and hit the bell icon to never miss another spine-tingling story. Until next time, stay vigilant, stay curious, and may the mysteries of the supernatural continue to captivate your imagination. This is Supernatural Secrets signing off.